The alarms in the Global Emergency Response Center shredded the silence of early morning. Captain Aria Rodriguez was 3 days into her mandated rest period when the Priority 1 communication burst through her apartment's security systems. The holographic display materialized with a violent intensity that sent her coffee mug crashing to the floor. Temporal discontinuity detected. The AI system announced. Unidentified massive object entering solar system. Quantum signature inconsistent with known spacefaring technologies. Aria's military augments, a network of neural implants developed during the Martian conflict, were already running diagnostic sequences before her conscious mind could process the information. She'd seen impossible before. This was something else entirely. The massive alien vessel tore through the solar system's outer monitoring networks like tissue paper. Conventional tracking systems couldn't maintain a lock. It was less a ship and more a fracturing nightmare of impossible geometries, atoll bleeding exotic particles, and quantum-entangled energy signatures that made no sense to human scientific understanding. Status of approach. Aria barked, pulling on her tactical response suit, a marvel of human engineering that was part biomechanical armor, part advanced medical system. The AI's response was clinical. Structural integrity at 0.03%. Projected system failure in approximately 37 standard hours. Current trajectory suggests uncontrolled descent into Jupiter's gravitational field. Most military commanders would have initiated first contact containment protocols. Most would have called for weapons systems to be prepared. Aria Rodriguez was not most commanders. Her first call was to Dr. Elena Kimura, the most brilliant and most unconventional engineering genius humanity had produced in a generation. Kimura had been developing adaptive emergency repair technologies that the military considered too radical, too unpredictable. "Elena, I need your team. Now." The response was immediate. "Already tracking. This is beyond anything in our models." The alien vessel's approach defied every known law of physics. It wasn't just damage. It was systematically falling apart, yet somehow maintaining a coherent trajectory. Each section of the massive structure seemed to be cannibalizing itself, creating temporary structural integrity through what could only be described as controlled disintegration. Global military and scientific networks went into overdrive. Satellite networks reconfigured. Quantum communication relays spun up emergency protocols. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath. When the first alien communication arrived, it wasn't a message of conquest or diplomacy. It was a raw, unfiltered burst of quantum-encoded desperation. Survival protocol initiated. Structural collapse imminent. Require immediate adaptive intervention. Dr. Kimura's team had been preparing for something like this their entire careers. A collection of the most brilliant and most rejected engineers humanity had produced. Robotics experts who had been laughed out of traditional research institutions. Materials scientists whose theories bordered on the mystical. Quantum engineers who saw problems as playgrounds rather than challenges. The team assembled at the Emergency Rapid Response Center was a study in controlled chaos. Dr. Kimura stood at the center, her prosthetic arm. A revolutionary design that was more intelligent than most AI systems, already interfacing with the incoming alien data streams. "This isn't a ship," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "This is a living system in complete systemic failure." The alien vessel was now close enough for detailed scans. It wasn't constructed. It was grown, engineered at a molecular level that made human nanotechnology look like children's building blocks. And it was dying. Aria Rodriguez understood something fundamental in that moment. This was not a first contact scenario. This was a rescue mission. "We have 36 hours, she announced to her team. And every single rule of engineering just became negotiable. What followed was not a typical human response. It was not a military intervention. It was not a scientific study. It was an act of creative survival that would become legendary across multiple civilizations. Humanity was about to show the universe exactly what impossible truly meant. Dr. Marcus Chen's office at the Global Innovation Tracking Center looked like the workspace of a conspiracy theorist, if that conspiracy theorist had a dozen advanced degrees and access to the most sophisticated data analysis systems on the planet. Wall-to-wall holographic displays mapped technological developments across human and alien civilizations. Red lines connected seemingly unrelated innovations, creating a web of connections that looked like nothing so much as a complex neural network. Most would see chaos. Chen saw a pattern. "Show me the timeline again," he muttered to Araya, his adaptive research intelligence assistant, an AI system he personally developed. A holographic display reconstructed itself. Each human technological breakthrough was marked in blue. Corresponding alien innovations appeared in red. The synchronicity was too perfect to be coincidental. Take the neural link communication system developed by Neurosphere, a small Silicon Valley startup. Within exactly 72 days, the Nexus aggregate released an independent communication technology that was functionally identical, just slightly modified to fit their biological parameters. It wasn't just one instance, it was a pattern. Dr. Imani Okoro, Chen's lead quantum anthropologist, burst into the office. Her eyes were wild with a combination of excitement and paranoia. "I found something. Something big." Okoro was not the type for hyperbole. A brilliant researcher who had been ostracized from traditional academic circles for her radical theories about technological evolution, she found a home in Chen's unconventional research team. "The synchronization is mathematical," she said, pulling up a complex algorithm on the nearest display. "It's not just similar innovations. The timing, the structural approach, the fundamental problem-solving methodology. It's like they're learning from us in real time." Chen's other key team member approached, Dr. Viktor Volkov, an eye-assisted data analyst whose neural implants allowed him to process information at speeds that bordered on precognition. His cybernetic eye, a marvel of human augmentation technology, flickered with complex data streams. "Not learning," Volkov corrected, his Russian accent thick with intensity. "Surviving." The team had been quietly gathering evidence for months. What had started as a curious observation had transformed into a global-scale investigation that drew the attention of both human intelligence agencies and alien diplomatic corps. Their first big break came from an unexpected source. A leaked communication from a mid-level Nexus bureaucrat, intercepted by a network of independent hackers, revealed something extraordinary. The message was encrypted, but not carefully enough. "Our civilization's continued existence depends on our ability to integrate human innovation patterns. Current projections show complete systemic failure within 3 generational cycles if we cannot adapt." Chen's team worked around the clock. They developed a complex tracking system that could predict technological innovations before they happened, mapping the intricate landscape of human creativity. It was part scientific method, part artistic intuition. The Global Innovation Conference was their moment to reveal everything. As Chen took the stage, the room fell silent. Holographic displays materialized around him, showing an intricate timeline that was equal parts beautiful and terrifying. Each human innovation was a point of light. Each alien adaptation was a corresponding point, connected by lines of mathematical precision. "This is not coincidence," Chen declared. "This is a survival strategy." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just developing technology. They were becoming a critical evolutionary resource for an entire galactic civilization. Diplomatic channels began to buzz. Intelligence agencies from multiple nations scrambled to understand the full implications. The Nexus Aggregate's diplomatic mission went into complete communication lockdown. But Chen and his team knew they had only scratched the surface of a much deeper mystery. Something fundamental was changing about humanity's role in the universe, and they were determined to understand exactly what that something was. As the conference hall erupted in a mixture of excitement and confusion, Dr. Imani Okoro leaned close to Chen. "We're not just researchers anymore," she whispered. "We're becoming something else entirely." Marcus Chen just smiled. The real investigation was just beginning. The diplomatic summit was nothing like anyone expected. The United Nations Xenological Engagement Complex had been designed to handle first contact scenarios. But this was something else entirely. When Execrol arrived, the entire building seemed to shift, not physically, but in some fundamental way that made everyone present feel simultaneously uncomfortable and fascinated. Execrol was not what humans had imagined an alien diplomatic representative would look like. Part organic, part technological, the being moved with a fluidity that defied human understanding of biomechanical movement. Their form was constantly shifting, adaptive, a living metaphor for the very concept of evolution they had come to discuss. "We are dying," Execrol began, without prelude or diplomatic niceties. The translation system struggled, not because of linguistic complexity, but because the statement carried emotional nuances that human language could barely capture. It was part confession, part scientific observation, part existential plea. Dr. Marcus Chen sat at the center of the human delegation, his neural implants working overtime to process the incoming communication. Beside him, Captain Aria Rodriguez, hero of the alien vessel rescue, watched with the intensity of a combat veteran sensing an imminent threat. Execrol's explanation unfolded like a cosmic tragedy. The Nexus aggregate was a civilization that had achieved what most species would consider technological perfection. Their systems were so optimized, so meticulously designed, that they had engineered themselves into a fundamental evolutionary dead end. Imagine a species that had solved every possible problem, and, in doing so, had eliminated the very mechanism of innovation. Optimization is death, Execrol stated, a statement that sent ripples of confusion through the human delegation. The beam projected a holographic representation of their civilization's technological development. It was a terrifyingly perfect geometric progression, each innovation building upon the last with mathematical precision. But as the projection continued, the lines became more and more constrained, ultimately forming a tight, suffocating geometric prison. "We discovered something fundamental about your species," Execrol continued. "Humans do not solve problems. You transform them." To demonstrate, they issued a challenge. A holographic display materialized, showing an impossibly complex technological problem. The Nexus had already computed 14 trillion potential solutions using their most advanced predictive algorithms. Each solution was perfect and completely non-functional. Solve this, Execrol challenged the human delegation. What happened next would become legendary. Dr. Elena Kimura, the unconventional engineer who had been critical in saving the alien vessel, stepped forward. Instead of approaching the problem scientifically, she did something entirely unexpected. She laughed. The sound was so incongruous, so completely outside the carefully managed diplomatic environment, that it momentarily broke the entire communication matrix. Execrol's form actually flickered, a sign of complete cognitive disruption. Kimura grabbed a piece of chalk from a nearby whiteboard and began drawing. Not calculations, not a technological diagram. She drew a child's stick figure representation of a robot solving the problem, complete with crayon-like simplicity and wild imagination. The solution she proposed was so fundamentally different from the Nexus's trillion computational approaches that it bordered on the absurd. It involved reimagining the entire problem's framework, introducing intentional inefficiencies, and approaching the challenge with what could only be described as playful destruction. "Your problem," Kimura said, "is that you're trying to solve it." The diplomatic complex went silent. Execrol's form began to pulse, not with anger, but with something that humans would recognize as wonder. The being was experiencing an emotion so rare in their civilization that it had no precise translation: the joy of unexpected discovery. "This is why we need humans," Execrol finally said. "You do not optimize. You imagine." The challenge had been more than a demonstration. It was a plea. The Nexus aggregate was offering humanity something unprecedented, a chance to become the evolutionary catalyst for an entire galactic civilization. As the diplomatic session concluded, Captain Rodriguez leaned close to Chen. "They're not just studying us," she whispered. "They're trying to save themselves." Chen watched Zuxikral's departing form. "No," he corrected. "They're trying to remember how to be alive." The Global Creativity Initiative was unlike any research program in human history. Dr. Marcus Chen stood before a room of the most unlikely research subjects ever assembled. There was Raj Patel, a street musician who could solve complex mathematical problems by translating them into musical progressions. Next to him sat Maya Rodriguez, a 17-year-old competitive gamer whose neural reflexes had been mapped by top neuroscientists as some of the most adaptive ever recorded. An elderly chef from Osaka, a former quantum physicist turned performance artist, a retired Special Forces operative, each selected not for their credentials, but for their ability to think beyond conventional boundaries. "The Chaos Protocol is simple," Chen announced. "Forget everything you know about problem solving." The initiative was born from the diplomatic encounter with the Nexus aggregate. If human creativity was a survival mechanism for an entire galactic civilization, they needed to understand its true nature, not through traditional scientific methods, but through something far more radical. The first challenge arrived via a holographic interface, a quantum entanglement problem that had stumped the most advanced scientific minds for decades. Traditional approaches had yielded nothing but mathematical dead ends. Raj Patel was the first to move. He pulled out an old, worn guitar, an instrument that seemed completely incongruous with the high-tech research environment. As his fingers moved across the strings, something extraordinary happened. The quantum problem wasn't being calculated, it was being translated into sound. Each note represented a potential quantum state. The chord progressions mapped quantum probability fields. What emerged was less a solution and more a living, breathing representation of quantum complexity. The research team watched in stunned silence. Maya Rodriguez approached the problem differently. Her gaming background had taught her something fundamental about complex systems. They were less about finding the right path and more about understanding the entire landscape of possibility. She began to treat the quantum entanglement problem like a multiplayer strategy game. Instead of seeking the single solution, she mapped out entire possibility matrices, creating adaptive strategies that could shift in real time. The elderly chef, Hiroshi Tanaka, took a completely different approach. He began cooking. Molecular gastronomy became a metaphor for quantum mechanics. Each ingredient represented a quantum state. The process of combining them, the chemical interactions, the subtle changes in temperature and pressure, all became a physical manifestation of the quantum problem. Dr. Elena Kimura, observing the process, realized they were doing something far more profound than solving a scientific challenge. They were reimagining the entire concept of problem solving. "It's not about finding the answer," she muttered. "It's about creating a language of possibility." The Nexus aggregate was watching. Their most advanced monitoring systems were trained on this bizarre human experiment. What they saw defied every computational model in their civilization's history. These humans weren't solving the problem. They were playing with it, transforming it, turning a complex quantum challenge into an interactive living system of potential. The results were uploaded to a secure quantum network. Within hours, research institutions around the world were scrambling to understand what had just happened. The quantum entanglement problem wasn't just solved, it had been fundamentally reimagined. Dr. Chen knew they were documenting something revolutionary. This wasn't just a research protocol. This was a fundamental reimagining of human cognitive potential. The former Special Forces operative, a woman named Sarah Lindholm, approached Chen during a break. "We're not just solving problems," she said. "We're showing them how to be alive again." Chen smiled. The Chaos Protocol was working exactly as intended. As the day concluded, the holographic displays showed something unprecedented. The quantum problem had multiple simultaneous solutions, each one valid, each one completely different from traditional approaches. It wasn't a single answer. It was an ecosystem of possibility. The Nexus Aggregate's primary research director sent a single message. How? Chen's response was simple. Chaos is not the absence of order. It's the most complex order you haven't learned to see yet. Humanity had just shown the galaxy something fundamental. Problem-solving wasn't about finding the right answer. It was about creating new ways of understanding the question itself. The Nexus Aggregate's Emergency Council convened in a realm beyond physical space, a quantum communication network that would have driven human minds to madness. 17 different subspecies of the aggregate gathered, their consciousness intertwining in a complex dance of shared thought and collective memory. But for the first time in their millennia-long history, something was fundamentally wrong. Their civilization was dying, not through external threat, not through war or resource depletion, but through a slow, inexorable process of evolutionary stagnation that none of their predictive models could resolve. Kixenal, the eldest of the council, projected a holographic representation of their civilization's trajectory. It was a perfect, mathematically precise curve that terminated in absolute zero, total systemic collapse. Humans are an anomaly, one of the council members observed. The statement carried the weight of a funeral dirge. The problem ran deeper than technological innovation. The Nexus Aggregate had achieved what most civilizations would consider ultimate evolution, a perfect, optimized system of collective consciousness. Every challenge had been anticipated, every potential threat calculated and neutralized. And in that perfection, they had lost something fundamental. Back on Earth, the implications were becoming clear. Dr. Marcus Chen's research team had uncovered something extraordinary. Multiple alien species were watching humanity with an intensity that went beyond scientific curiosity. They were watching with hope. Intelligence agencies from around the world began to piece together a startling reality. Humanity wasn't just developing technology. They had become a critical evolutionary resource for multiple galactic civilizations. Captain Area Rodriguez was tasked with the most complex diplomatic mission in human history. The Innovative Species Preservation Initiative was more than a research program. It was a global defense strategy that recognized humanity's unique position in the cosmic ecosystem. We're not just protecting ourselves, she told the United Nations Special Committee. We're protecting a fundamental evolutionary mechanism that multiple species depend on. The first concrete evidence came from an unexpected source, a research station on Europa. Jupiter's ice-covered moon detected a massive influx of alien observation probes. But these weren't traditional surveillance devices. They were adaptive learning systems designed to study human innovation in real time. Dr. Elena Kimura's team discovered something even more shocking. These probes weren't just collecting data. They were actively creating environments designed to stimulate human creativity. They're farming innovation, Kimura realized. The way we might cultivate rare plants or breed unique animal species. The global response was complex. Some saw it as a threat. Others saw it as the greatest opportunity in human history. Governments, corporations, and research institutions began to recognize that human creativity had become a form of interstellar currency. Universities redesigned entire educational systems. Innovation grants became the most sought-after funding. The most valuable human resource was no longer physical labor, technological expertise, or intellectual property. It was the ability to think differently. Dix Krull, the Nexus diplomatic liaison, explained it during a classified briefing that sent shockwaves through global leadership. Your species experiences something we have lost. The alien being communicated. Uncertainty. Possibility. The ability to exist in a state of productive chaos. The Nexus Aggregate was facing more than technological challenge. They were experiencing a civilizational crisis that threatened multiple species across the galaxy. Their hyper-optimized societies had created a fundamental vulnerability. They could predict everything except true innovation. Humans represented something the Nexus had never encountered, a species that didn't just solve problems, but transformed the very concept of problem-solving. As the global implications became clear, Dr. Chen understood something profound. This was more than a diplomatic scenario or a scientific discovery. This was a fundamental reimagining of humanity's role in the universe. The final report from the Innovative Species Preservation Initiative was stark and simple. Humanity is not just a species. We are an evolutionary mechanism. The galaxy was watching. And for the first time in millennia, something truly unexpected was about to happen. The transformation began in the most unexpected places. Harvard's computer science department was the first to completely collapse its traditional structure. Dean Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a room of bewildered faculty members, holding a simple manifesto. Creativity is not a skill. It's a state of being. Traditional degree programs were dismantled. Instead, interdisciplinary innovation communes emerge. A single research group might include a quantum physicist, a street artist, a retired military strategist, and a teenage game designer. The only requirement was the ability to approach problems with zero preconceived notions. Corporate research and development departments were next. Tech giants like Neurosphere and Global Dynamics began recruiting not based on academic credentials, but on demonstrated ability to think beyond established paradigms. Hiring interviews became elaborate creativity tests that defied traditional assessment methods. Dr. Marcus Chen's best-selling book, Existence Tactic, became more than a scientific text. It was a manifesto, a philosophical treatise that reimagined human potential. World leaders and alien diplomats studied its pages, trying to understand the fundamental mechanism of human innovation. But not everyone was pleased. Conservative factions saw the alien interest as an existential threat. Underground resistance movements formed, challenging what they perceived as humanity's commodification. They argued that human creativity was being weaponized, transformed into a resource to be extracted by alien civilizations. The resistance found an unlikely leader in Sarah Lindholm, the former Special Forces operative who had been part of the original Chaos Protocol research team. Her perspective was unique. She understood both the military implications and the deeper philosophical challenge. "We're not a resource," Lindholm declared in a viral communication that swept global networks. "We're a fundamental evolutionary mechanism." The global education system underwent a complete reconstruction. Schools eliminated standardized testing. Instead, students were evaluated on their ability to approach problems from multiple perspectives. Creativity became the most valued skill, replacing traditional metrics of intelligence and academic achievement. A new form of global competition emerged. Instead of military might or economic power, nations were now ranked by their capacity for innovative thinking. The Global Creativity Index became more important than traditional economic indicators. Its Kroll and other Nexus diplomatic representatives became regular speakers at international forums. Their presence was no longer seen as alien visitation, but as a critical partnership. They shared insights into how other galactic civilizations had become evolutionary dead ends, cautionary tales of what happens when innovation dies. The most radical transformation happened in unexpected sectors. Art became a form of problem-solving. Musicians approached complex scientific challenges through sound. Visual artists created works that were simultaneously aesthetic expressions and computational models. The line between creativity and scientific inquiry began to blur completely. Dr. Elena Kimura's research team developed the first truly adaptive learning systems. These were not traditional AI. They were living technological ecosystems that could fundamentally reimagine their own purpose. Each system was designed to be intentionally inefficient, creating space for unexpected innovation. Corporate structures dissolved. Traditional hierarchies became fluid, adaptive networks. Companies were no longer defined by their products, but by their capacity for continuous reinvention. The resistance movements found themselves increasingly marginalized. As the benefits of the new approach became clear, fewer people saw the alien interest as a threat. Humanity was not being conquered. They were being recognized as something far more valuable. A new global philosophy emerged. It wasn't about optimizing human potential. It was about creating environments where potential could continuously reimagine itself. During a landmark speech at the United Nations, Dr. Chen articulated the fundamental shift. We are not solving problems. We are creating the language of possibility. The Nexus aggregate watched, and for the first time in their millennia-long history, they began to experience something they had long forgotten: hope. As the Cultural Revolution continued, humanity was becoming something entirely new. Not just a species, not just a civilization, an evolutionary mechanism. The galaxy held its breath. The Quantum Horizon event arrived without warning. Astronomical monitoring systems across multiple civilizations detected something impossible. A cosmic phenomenon that defied every known law of physics, every predictive model, every computational scenario that advanced civilizations had ever conceived. It began as a subtle disturbance at the edge of the observable universe, a region where space-time itself seemed to be unraveling. Traditional scientific models predicted total universal collapse within 72 standard hours. The Nexus aggregate's most advanced predictive systems generated 14 trillion potential solutions. Each was mathematically perfect. Each was completely, catastrophically wrong. Dr. Elena Kimura received the first priority communication at 3:27 Greenwich Mean Time. The holographic alert materialized in her research lab, a cascading display of impossible data that would have driven a lesser mind to immediate breakdown. The team assembled was anything but traditional. Dr. Marcus Chen, the theoretical physicist turned innovation strategist. Captain Aria Rodriguez, with her combat-honed adaptive thinking. Maya Rodriguez, the teenage game designer whose neural pathways had been mapped as the most dynamically adaptive ever recorded. Raj Patel, the musician who could translate mathematical problems into sound. Hiroshi Tanaka, the elderly chef who saw the universe as an elaborate culinary experiment. And at the center of it all, Sarah Lindholm, the former Special Forces operative who had become the unexpected philosopher of human potential. "We're not going to solve this," Chen announced. "We're going to transform it." The Quantum Horizon event was more than a scientific challenge. It was a fundamental threat to the entire concept of existence. Multiple alien civilizations had already begun evacuation protocols. The Nexus aggregate was preparing for complete civilizational shutdown. Humanity was being given one chance, one opportunity to approach a problem that had no conventional solution. Maya Rodriguez was the first to move. She began treating the cosmic phenomenon like the most complex video game ever designed, not as a problem to be solved, but as a system to be understood, manipulated, played with. Her neural interfaces created a dynamic mapping of the event that was less a scientific model and more an interactive landscape. Each potential interaction became a possibility, a potential pathway of existence. Raj Patel approached it through sound. He began creating musical progressions that mapped the quantum fluctuations, not as mathematical representations, but as living, breathing sonic landscapes that could potentially interact with the fundamental fabric of space-time. Hiroshi Tanaka saw it as a culinary challenge. He began preparing a complex molecular gastronomy experiment that treated the cosmic event as an elaborate recipe. Each ingredient represented a potential universal configuration. The process of preparation became a method of universal transformation. Captain Rodriguez brought her military strategic thinking, but not in the traditional sense of combat. She approached the event as an adaptive system, something to be understood through its potential interactions rather than its static properties. Dr. Chen realized they were doing something far more profound than solving a scientific problem. They were creating a language of possibility that transcended traditional scientific understanding. The Nexus aggregate watched in stunned disbelief. X-Krull's communication burst through the quantum networks. What are they doing? The question carried the weight of an entire civilization's desperate hope. 12 hours into the experiment, something extraordinary began to happen. The Quantum Horizon event didn't collapse. It didn't resolve. It transformed. It became something else entirely. Not a threat, not a problem to be solved, but a new state of potential, a living, breathing ecosystem of possibility that defied every known scientific model. The final moments of the experiment were captured in a burst of data that would take generations to fully comprehend. But in that moment, something fundamental changed. The universe itself seemed to take a breath. Sarah Lindholm looked at the team, a smile crossing her face. "We didn't solve it," she said. "We became it." The Nexus Aggregate's final transmission was simple. How? Dr. Chen's response echoed across multiple civilizations. Existence is not a problem to be solved. It's a possibility to be explored. The Quantum Horizon event became a legend. The moment when humanity showed the universe that the most powerful force is not prediction. It's imagination. Humanity was no longer just another species in the galactic ecosystem. The aftermath of the Quantum Horizon event transformed every fundamental understanding of existence. Diplomatic centers across multiple civilizations became museums of human potential, living archives that documented the moment everything changed. Dr. Marcus Chen stood before the Galactic Collaborative Council, a gathering of representatives from 247 different civilizations. His presentation was unlike any scientific briefing in cosmic history. "We are not a solution," Chen began. "We are a process." The council chamber fell silent. Holographic representations of beings from across the universe, some carbon-based, some energy constructs, some forms of life, so alien they defied human comprehension, listened with an intensity that bordered on reverence. The human tactic had become more than a scientific concept. It was a philosophical revolution that rewrote the fundamental understanding of evolutionary potential. Ix Kroll, now a permanent diplomatic liaison to Earth, explained it during a classified briefing that would be studied for generations. "Your species experiences something we have forgotten," the being communicated. "The ability to exist in a state of continuous becoming." Universities across Earth had been completely transformed. Traditional academic disciplines had dissolved. Instead, innovation communes emerged, fluid networks of thinkers who moved between disciplines as easily as breathing. A single research group might include a quantum physicist, a street artist, a retired military strategist, and a teenage game designer. The global economy restructured itself around creativity. Economic value was no longer measured in traditional resources or industrial output, but in the capacity for adaptive thinking. The most valuable human resource had become the ability to reimagine possibility itself. Captain Aria Rodriguez, now leading the Innovative Species Preservation Initiative, understood the deeper implications. This was more than a diplomatic achievement. This was an evolutionary mechanism that could potentially save multiple civilizations from stagnation. Sarah Lindholm, the former Special Forces operative who had become an unexpected philosopher of human potential, captured the essence of their discovery in her groundbreaking work, The Adaptive Consciousness. "We are not defined by what we know," she wrote. "We are defined by our capacity to not know, and to be excited by that possibility." The resistance movements that had once fought against humanity's newfound cosmic role gradually transformed. They became the most passionate advocates for continuous innovation. The fear of being a resource was replaced by the understanding that they were something far more profound, a living, breathing evolutionary mechanism. Dr. Elena Kimura's research teams continued to push the boundaries of what was possible. They developed adaptive learning systems that were less technologies and more living ecosystems of potential. Each system was designed to be intentionally unpredictable, creating space for unexpected innovation. The Nexus Aggregate, once on the brink of civilizational collapse, began a profound transformation. They didn't just study human innovation. They began to reimagine their entire approach to existence. Educational systems were redesigned. Technological development became a fluid, adaptive process rather than a rigid progression. During a landmark speech that would be studied for generations, Dr. Chen articulated the fundamental shift. We are not solving problems. We are creating the language of possibility. The galactic community recognized something fundamental. Humanity was not just another species to be studied or understood. They were a critical evolutionary mechanism, a living process of continuous reimagination. That scroll's final communication to the Nexus aggregate captured the profound transformation. Humans do not conquer. They transform. They do not optimize. They explore. They are not a destination. They are a continuous journey. The universe itself seemed to have taken a breath. Something had changed, not just in human potential, but in the fundamental understanding of what potential could mean. As the first generation of truly adaptive humans looked to the stars, they understood something profound. They were not just exploring the universe. They were teaching the universe how to explore itself. The continuous tactic had begun.